Welcome to the Emptive Podcast, where we chat about cloud-based solutions that make selling your e-commerce products easier, more profitable, and effective. Today we'll be discussing purchasing barriers, tactics on how to remove some of them by educating your customers, and finally some of the psychology behind purchasing decisions with theories of the reptilian brain and the counter-argument of the prefrontal cortex. So let's, I think, start with maybe a couple of the emotional barriers.
Okay. It's a great place.
Skepticism, somebody is unsure, cynicism.
Yeah. All the time. I mean, right? Yeah. I think one of the top 5 in my book are, let's see, the old cost too much, right? Or can I afford it? Which, or if I spend this, I'll lose something else, right? That's a huge one.
Right. So, or if somebody's procrastinating for whatever reason, we create in our mind like some reason. And it could be because I can't afford it yet, or I'm not paid yet. There's so much of that
payment process that comes in, and 4 easy payments. It won't work is another one. I mean, right? It won't work, or it won't work for me, or it's not. Won't work for me means like fit. It might not fit me,
right?
That kind of thing. That's another one that's huge, and always in the way. What about it's too difficult? That's another one.
And like what? Too difficult to buy, or maybe too difficult for them to use?
Could be both. There's too many steps. It's too complicated, and I'm frustrated. It's too, it's too difficult. You want me to go through all these things, or I don't think I'm going to be able to use it because it's too difficult for me. I need something easier, simpler, right?
Yeah.
It could be a bunch of barriers on that one, I think, really.
There's also like even some of the like competing goals, and it doesn't necessarily have to be called competing goals. It's products are almost like competing against themselves and kind of confusing the customer. Sure. I use the example of a mattress company. I was going to purchase a mattress, and I wanted a firm mattress, and they had, of course, like everything. There's like 16 different options of mattresses you can buy.
And you can't cross compare store to store,
Well, I try, and I actually will say this company did a nice job of showing some of the competition, so they made me less skeptical because of that. But it got confusing when the way they named their products. There was this one called like the Brick, and then some of these other ones that claimed to be the firmest in their lineup had just regular name like Premium Plus, or it didn't have that brick, right? Which I'm like, wait, but I want the firm one. So it kind of created like this competing competition between the two products. What's another one? Unclear communication. I mean, you talk about
there's a lot of that, right? Lacking, or wrong focus. What is it? What do you say?
Right church, wrong pew.
Yeah. That one, I mean, no buy-in, no connection to me or who I am, or to
the emotional buy-in of it.
Emotional, right?
Making that connection with the customer.
Yeah.
Why do you think that emotional connection is so important? Because people will say it all the time, but like, why is it important for me when I'm buying, I don't know what, like socks, to have an emotional connection?
First of all, the brands, and they like this. I mean, and it's intentional, is we all like to be in our own camps, right? So you're Pepsi, I'm Coke, or you're this, or you're that, right? So the brands help separate us and put us in part of a group, but also keep us separate from other groups, which is our tribal thing. I think it's kind of fundamental to that. That's how I see it. And then you get attached to a brand, and then you'll defend that brand to death, if you really like it, right?
And be more loyal and purchase
super
again.
Loyal. Right. And you'll tell all your friends and all that. So I don't know. Those are that's what the Holy Grail is, to get the person to be attached to your brand at that level. Right.
And speaking of like, tell your friends, I think now the idea of word of mouth is so unbelievably important. And I think brands and people will sometimes forget that, and they think, oh my gosh, like I make all this noise on the internet. But really, I mean, as there's more noise, as you dilute, like networks get diluted by so much content and activity, you listen even more to the people who are close to you.
Yeah, that's very true. You're always asking them, what would you do? Who have you used? Right. And I think that is just adding the little blurb that says the testimonial, doesn't, it had a lot of weight. I think it's waning a little bit. I
Yeah,
mean,
what do you think about? I don't want to, like, I know this is not the topic that we set out to talk about,
no,
but what
yeah,
do you
you're
think
right. We can
about
go
the FAQs, like, or the not the FAQs? I'm sorry, the testimonials.
testimonials.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, did Joe Schmo just write that? Like, I like
I consider them all fake. And now you've heard the news on Amazon and some of these other,
right.
places where they were stuff, which we all knew was going on. Yeah, when I talk to some people and they say, well, what should I do if I don't have the perfect FAQ? I'm like, well, if you're trying to make a point, about your product and you want to really hit it home, I mean, go ahead and make it up because it's no different. I mean, it sounds like you're lying, but really you're waiting for that one person to write the perfect FAQ
Well,
or
I think the FAQ. I don't think it's dishonest to write your FAQ that aren't like
right.
necessarily frequently. I think it's the category is like these are questions that could be frequently asked. The
Correct.
testimonials, making those up is shady, and
But I'm pointing to you. Do you think they're all real?
no, they're
That's
not, and I want to believe that they are, and I know
you
you're right,
want to
they're
believe
not.
that. So your competition is making them up, and you're being real. I mean, I just don't know. That's why I think I don't hold too much weight. When I look through those, I look for the honest ones that'll point out the flaw as well as the So you read through them. If they're all just 100% roses,
Yeah,
you kind of ignore them.
or product specific pieces too, like, oh, this fit well with this, or this was, oh, it wasn't too big, it was,
Right.
that, or the color or the shade. People giving their like real opinion on that, I think, is
That stuff is
valuable,
very valuable.
which is
Yes.
kind of like an FAQ. So
Yeah, it's more of an FAQ than a testimonial. Yeah, I would agree.
anyway, I don't want to get hung up on that, but
No, no, no. So let's talk about what are the technical barriers, right? We talked about emotional, but John, I think we
oh
kind of
yeah,
want to talk about what technical barriers might you find that are on most of the websites and e-com sites that we work with.
poor design.
There's poor
Who's
design
got
is
those?
huge, right? Poor speed. Yeah, I would say that's a
Well,
number
speed,
one.
yeah. I mean, listen, if you're not loading quick, the people are
Yeah.
off. Like,
People
my
have no
patience for
patience.
that is,
Yeah.
I have no
And it
threshold.
gets less and less, right? Every year, we want it faster. We used to wait and wait and wait. Now we won't wait even 5 minutes or 5 seconds.
Right.
Uh, how about too much crammed in? You've seen sites like this where it's just a mess of navigation or
Yeah.
products all viewed all over.
You mentioned this the other day, about old school newspapers, how
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they were so unbelievably crammed the way, because they're
Oh,
like, we have to fit every amount of information we can. They're like the kerning of the letters, the margins. It's like a
yeah.
hodgepodge jigsaw of,
I've tried to read them. I have
yeah,
some old ones from my family. I have a hard time even reading them because it hurts the eyes. But yet,
use white
yeah, back
space.
then, yeah, no white
No,
space. There's
use
not a
white. They don't use any white space.
no. So yeah, there's an example of where you need white space. How about some of the other ones that especially before recently with SSL, almost every e-com is SSL. It has to be now.
Like
But
the lack of
but I
trust.
mean, think about right. Trust was a big one, and I remember everybody used to stamp their sites with trust icons and
See,
stuff
I
like
don't.
that.
Again, maybe it's my generation.
No, I think they're
If
cheesy
it
too.
has
Yeah,
that gimmicky early 2000s, God, if it's getting 1990 on me, then we're not, then it's really, I don't trust it. I'm like, I do not want to put my credit card in that if it has that gimmicky look.
I don't run into that as much as I do. We're going to hide our phone number. So, because we don't have anybody, during the last couple of years with the pandemic, we don't have anybody answer the phones. And I get it. But you've heard that one a few times. Let's hide the phone number. I know a few people have done that. And then it just makes it look shady. Like, well, what if I have a problem? I have nowhere to call, right?
Right.
Or no address, or hiding that information, burying it. And I realize why they're doing it. They're not doing it on purpose, but it makes them look shady, right? It makes
Right.
it look like if I have a problem, these people are not going to be there for me.
What about,
Making me register, doing stuff like that.
did you say
Yeah.
mandatory registration?
Registration.
I
Yeah, I
hate
think,
that.
yeah, it's a turn off.
I'm just like, no, I
And
want to see it. I want to see the price. I don't want to put it in my cart to see the price. That I hate too.
yeah, I think that one's more of a,
Legality.
yeah, between the reseller, the distributor, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I also think
I,
sometimes it's a tactic they use to get it in the cart.
it might be, but I do know I ran into that, and I asked years ago where that came from, and they're not allowed to publicly
Advertise it because it's a below
advertise a lower price on a
MSRP.
certain right. They can sell it for lower, but they can't
Okay.
advertise. Um, let's see what else.
Hard to find.
To
We talked about navigation a little bit. Even just like the entire
yeah,
hierarchy
yeah.
of the site. Like you're not.
Poor searching, right? Poor
Yeah.
searching or no search. Yeah, those are usually barriers. And just maybe just not putting much. If you don't put your best foot forward and you didn't put much attention out there, and your site looks like people are going to think your product or your brand is
Right.
right? So
Sort of like the
that's kind of the
curb
design.
appeal, like if your business and your
Yeah,
shop is sort of,
yeah,
dirty windows and wallpapers falling down, then it's like, do I like want to eat here? Like, do you clean your
yeah.
dishes?
Right. It's exactly the same thing on the internet.
What are some? They're not always bad, and I mean like because I get it. Some
No,
of these
no.
things we're going to talk about now, just preface it with like they're not necessarily all bad, but like peer pressure. That's one that we
Just
use.
adding some of that. Yeah.
Um, Others are
Mm.
doing it. What's the one you told me the other day? You're like, Mary from Wichita just purchased 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. What she did,
I
I
want
want
to
to go get
purchase
that
it.
same product, right?
Which
That doesn't really work on me, but it does work. And trying to use that same social post your purchase on Facebook. Remember, those things
right.
or purchase. Can't even speak. Post your purchase on social media. That one is another good one where tell your friends because we were just saying they're the ones who are going to recommend things. And if my friend bought it, I'll go
And a
buy it.
discount.
Um,
Give your friend
and
you
just
give your friend a discount, and then you get a kickback.
while supplies last,
Yeah, I
hurry
hate that.
now.
I don't know. I think there's a change
Yeah,
happening from like
yeah,
older
that one's
generations
getting
into newer ones that are like they used to work and now it's like they don't work. Like I know the supplies is either there. Well, in this climate with COVID,
or going out of business was a big one for the
really,
furnitures, right? Going out of business. I have a quick story on that. So there was, I'd love when something actually works, in the consumer's favor. There was a store that would sell some kind of high
okay,
end rugs, right? And they had a little store, and they were always going out of business, and they had been going out of business for 2 years. I kid you not. And you would drive by, and they'd have the signs, and eventually the city came and said, "Listen, somebody in the city council just had a fit and said, you can't do that. You just
yeah,
can't." And the guy's like, "What do you mean?" He was never going out of business. He just had that and thought it was the greatest marketing tool. And he said, "Well, that's just diluting when a real business does go out of business. I
interesting.
mean, there's a process." And so they made him take those signs down. They made him, and this is a local issue. I know where the store is. It's still
That's
there.
fun.
And the guy just thought it was his best marketing, and he used it for 2 to 3
Oh my
years.
gosh,
I
it's
mean,
like false advertising, big time, right? Like,
right. But I guess it's not illegal,
I guess
right?
though, if
So,
like you're actively going out of business, like we will go out of business if you do not come and shop.
well, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah,
The
and maybe
guy's like
that's his
desperate.
point. I will go out of business if you don't show. Well, I heard that the furniture stores, when they do that, they just reopen in another place, and they kind of take the same inventory, and
Like a
it's just a
traveling
tactic
carnival.
that they. Yeah, not all of them, and I'm not putting anybody in it, but there's a certain racket to that where they use that as a selling tool, and you know then they just pop up somewhere else, and then they'll go out of business again in 6 more months. But I don't know how much truth there is to that, but it seems like it doesn't. Why are these furniture stores
Yeah.
always going out of business? And yet other ones still seem to stick around, and so I haven't really
Well, I mean,
figured that one
it
out.
speaks to people because it's that urgency. It's
Right.
like get it now, or this
Yeah.
deal is going to be amazing. And is that like preying on people? And I know we're kind of going to go into like a segue into a new topic about kind of like why these tactics kind of work. And God, this is your. I know you
Yeah.
like this.
Oh, yeah, this is the old reptilian
Yeah.
lizard brain thing that I always bring up. Yeah.
So what is it?
Um,
The reptilian brain that people talk about.
yeah. Well, years ago, I saw some. It's out there. You can Google it. And I had this woman who spoke about it, and it really resonated because I kind of really took it as to heart. I understood what she was saying. Um, it really appeals to the ego. So it's going after the reptilian brain or the lizard brain is the primitive part of your brain. It's really mostly on survival, reproduction,
Like
things of
basic
that nature. So
instinctual
that's
stuff. Okay.
basic. Yeah, totally. Don't even understand it's going on sometimes, right? And marketers can tap into that. They have a source of getting you to buy things, and you don't even really realize you're buying them, and that's what the whole pitch is. How well it works, I mean, but you'll see that, in the sense of just playing off the ego, uh, putting your important points like in the very beginning and the very end, because most people don't read the middle. The reptilian brain doesn't read. That was the first thing I was like, what? But it doesn't really. It goes by imagery.
Okay.
So if you have all text, you're missing half of the. You're not talking to that part of the brain, and that part of the brain is very visual and it likes contrast. A good example is the before and after
Interesting.
photos. That's a reptilian. You hit it right on and it's always a photo, right? It doesn't matter what the words are. The brain puts the two and two together, and so you're really tapping into that. And my favorite, I mean, the one that you always hear me say is really about what's the source
Right.
of pain, because the reptilian brain hates pain. It wants to do anything to avoid pain. That's
Yeah.
the
Like,
survival
don't want to
mechanism.
die. I need water. Need like basic.
Yeah.
Now, this is just one sort of like view at it, right? I mean, there are other sides of it, and there are challenges.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not science, like,
Um, well, I mean, there's
or
some science behind it, but it's
there is
been
science behind it, but there's people on both sides,
right.
and then it's hard to really pin down, right? I wouldn't want to say that. Well, at least in the sense of the reptilian brain part is fact. It's kind of
Yeah,
known.
there's
Yeah.
this book by Glenda Lee Hoffman, and it's called The Secret Dowry of Eve: Women's Role in Development of Consciousness. It's sort of a long title. Yeah, it definitely is really deep, and like she talks about actually like the kind of a little bit different than the reptile brain, and talks about like the prefrontal um, cortex, how that is like an integrator that can kind of make the different parts of the brain work together, and
True. Right. Where you put your
right, and
goals
use
and
like put together all the different pieces of the brain to help the individual come together and make those goals, the common goals, come
decision.
together.
Right.
Now, she suggested that like the reptilian brain is sort of like out of control, and that it's connected to like
True.
sex,
I agree
power,
with that.
territory, things like that.
Right. Very
Yeah.
primitive. Right.
um
Very primitive.
and that she believes the prefrontal cortex is the key to kind of like the future. It's sort of like 2.0. If you can harness the power of the integration and the integrator who connects all of the pieces, you can kind of have a better, more
Mm.
holistic individual. I think this is interesting when we look at like what the prefrontal cortex does. Um, this is the area of the brain that relates to like your executive function, planning of complex cognitive behavior, uh, your social, your ability to see that like something is socially acceptable or not. So self control in some respect,
Right.
and
Right.
it sort of orchestrates
Yeah.
all the things that come together to kind of like make your goals.
So all those things are important. And is this a marketing
No,
book?
no,
Is it
not at
about
all.
marketing
So
or
so
just? Oh, okay.
I think it's important when you're kind of like talking about like the decision making process of buying a product. Like that's all a lot of the prefrontal cortex. Like
Oh, okay.
you're
I get
making
what
a
you're saying.
decision about whether you can purchase something. Does it help my overall goal? Does it speak to the different parts of my brain? Can I distinguish what is good, what's bad, what's better, what's best, even same versus different? Those are complex, like, to us and as a human, they seem easy, but things for like machines have a hard time with some of those, the
Oh
nuances
yeah.
between them.
Oh yeah. There's so much
Yeah.
nuance in there. Yeah. Well, I think that's. I mean, just to bring it to what we're doing now. I mean, isn't that kind of what we're doing? I would have to say in the last few years, our marketing efforts and working with clients has changed. We're more like educating, right, and guiding customers. I like
Yeah,
to call it a
like
guide
it's
process,
putting
right?
together
That's the
this
newest phrase.
hierarchy
Hmm.
so that the customer's able to actually understand and then make a decision, put that product in their cart, and checkout, like without sort of like
Right.
forcing them to do it. And I think that's,
Or
we
tricking
talk
them,
about a new
right?
approach that we've kind of been trying to do is what you said was education. And how can we answer our customers' questions? And how can we answer these kind of points of pain, like you mentioned before?
Right. How do we solve their points of pain and guide them to the answer? Because I don't think anybody wants to be told. That's sort of like, I think that those days are kind of gone. I think, this is the product for you. We know better. Remember the old commercials?
Yeah.
The doctor told you so. I think now everybody wants to figure it out on their own, but they want the ingredients to figure it out, like you were saying, and they want to process it in their head, and then they want to make the decision. So I think we have to educate them, and I think we have to guide them. I like the word guiding. I think is because I'm not really an educator, but I think I could guide you where the answers
Right.
are, or at least let you make your decision.
Be an aid, be your right
And
hand
then
man or
aid,
woman.
right, and then make it easy to order and easy to feel good about. You want them to walk away with the people want to feel good about their purchase, and I think that's all part of that whole process. And then they'll think good about the guide, they'll think good about the brand, they'll think good
Yeah.
about the site, right? I mean, could you have tricked them into buying it? Yeah, but that's a short fix. It's not going to do the long
Building a long
term
lasting
building of a
impression with the
brand.
customer that lasts an extended period of
Right.
time.
Yeah, I think that's where the magic mix is these
Yeah,
days,
because
right? I mean,
secretly, I think we all want someone to tell us what to buy. Like sometimes I'm like exhausted with my
yeah,
decisions, and I'm like,
yeah. Well, but if I
absolutely not.
came to you and said
Absolutely,
you have to buy this, you
absolutely.
would fight me
I'm the kind of
all the
person
way.
that's
You
like,
would fight
absolutely
me.
not. But if you're like, here, John, here's a few
Yeah.
options. We think option B would probably fit you best, but here's all the facts.
But you'd like to know, like, hey, did you try B? And have you,
Yeah,
see
of
what I'm saying?
course.
You'd want some social reassurance, right? But I mean, we have a couple
Yeah,
examples that we've been working on that are on that. I mean, and they are, I think they're going to be a
yeah.
huge
I'll
success.
set the
So,
tone with a couple of them, and then maybe we can do a couple like what ifs and kind of like brainstorm some other cool things we could do.
oh, I
So
love it.
we have
Yeah.
this one.
Okay.
We do a lot in the gardening industry or agriculture, and
Hmm.
we call it can I grow, and it's this simple button
Okay.
that sort of like hovers next to different products, different seeds, live plants. It could really be anything,
Oh,
um,
cool.
and it says can I grow this or whatever the verbiage is. And it's this fun little widget that sort of opens up. You click on it, you interact with it, you put in your zip code, and it's actually checking USDA garden zones against your zip code, and then seeing if you can grow that
Okay.
plant in your zone. And of course, there are other things we can add
Seems
to
very
that, but
helpful. Yeah.
example I'm using, we're just using garden zone.
So
Mhm.
that fits. That's a guide or an
Yep.
education, right? You're
And
educating and
then
guiding the customer. I get it.
after that, if they can't grow it, they get a message that says, "Oh no, like you can't grow this, but here are some recommendations." And then what we're doing is we're
Oh,
taking their
cool.
input of their garden zone, and we're not just giving them like random recommendations. Like we're actually giving them pretty good
Nice.
recommendations that are connected to past order history of other people and the garden zone that they live in. So we're kind of compiling that together in the background.
Right. So it's an intelligent. It's not just a random
That's
product.
exactly what
It's
I
an
should have said. I
intelligent,
said yeah, exactly. Yes. It's an intelligent
smart. Okay.
recommendation.
A lot of those things are just random products. That,
Right.
I see stuff that pops up all the time. I'm like, what the hell are you thinking? But so right. So you're educating, and then if it isn't the right fit, you're still guiding them, or we were saying before, you were trying to
Mhm.
help them through that purchase, right? I don't know the right way to say that, but you're
Right.
you're not just leaving them hanging. Nope, doesn't
We're
work for
helping them
you.
build their
Take off.
story as they go
Um,
and push them through, what the
okay.
sales, what you, I guess you call your sales funnel or your purchasing funnel. And the
Oh,
idea
okay.
is people get frustrated when they have to stop. It's just like if you're sitting in
Yeah.
traffic and if you had the option to spend 25 minutes longer on the drive but not sit in traffic, I would say a lot of people would choose the option that they'd rather be moving and driving than sitting.
I'm one of them.
So
Yeah, me
the
too. Yeah.
idea that you can't get something or that product won't work but here's a suggestion. Now, we even take another step further, and then if none of those suggestions work, we have a couple categories that they can pick that are related as well to kind of keep them. So we don't stop them.
Makes
We
sense.
give them a way to click through
Right.
and keep driving and take the back roads home.
Pretty much eliminates confusion. You know, it's a fact of one way or the other, whether the answer was
Right.
what
You
you
got your
wanted.
answer,
You
which is
got your answer,
removing
right?
that, will it work for me? I think we were talking about.
Well, now, how can we use this in other industries? That's very
Mhm.
specific, I think, to gardening, but I think there's got to be other things that would come into play. And so you said the what ifs. And so,
Yeah.
what
So
other
there are some
ideas
other
have you thought
areas
of that?
where it could work well with products that rely on other products. Will it work with this product?
Mm.
Pieces and
Oh, I
parts,
get it.
things
Yeah,
that go
yeah, right.
together with each other.
Like putting a
Is it
computer,
compatible?
yeah,
That's another one.
that's a
Yeah.
big one.
It's regardless of what it is, it's kind of harnessing that data and collecting it and then
Right.
doing
And
something with it.
repurposing it.
And I mean, you hear that out in the world now with big
Right.
data and companies gathering as much information.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just for the big guys anymore. And I think that that's like you're going to get these mid-sized companies and even smaller ones who are who should start collecting that information now because you can use that down the road to make really intelligent business decisions, whether it's AI or machine learning. Like, the terminology
Yeah, I
doesn't
don't think
matter.
that
It's just
matters. Yeah, I
using
agree.
a machine to make a
Yeah.
processing.
Let's declare that now. Remember, 5 years ago, we were declaring everybody should be at least getting mobile
Right.
phone numbers, right? That was our big thing. I remember doing that. So let's declare. I mean, everybody should be gathering their data, and they may not be able. Just like with the phone numbers, you can't use it yet, maybe, but you will need it. And if you wait too long and start gathering it later, it's not going to be
Yeah.
as you'll have less to work with, right? And
And
that's
I think
I think
we have a couple other notes here of some ideas, some things that we were talking about, sort of like the scanning of a cart. And you mentioned this to me one day about like you were purchasing computer parts with like your nephew or something, and you didn't realize one of them wasn't
oh yeah,
compatible,
that's
but
a good
you kind of
story.
thought maybe it wasn't. So you were like, wait,
Yeah, he was so my nephew was building his super gaming computer and I was helping him because I was the old uncle that knew a little bit in the family about computers. And I had built them when I was younger. And so he went now they have great websites and you can just buy all the components, right? And so he's buying it from here and here and he'd send me over the list and he was buying I think it was an AMD processor or board with an Intel chip. And I was like, I don't think those
I don't think
two,
they're going to
it's
play
like,
nice.
apples and oranges, they're not going to work. So we sort of saved the whole day by just that one point. And you're right. So that website wasn't smart enough that, which was kind of, it really bothered me then, but now it would really bother me because if that's what they're selling, it was putting components into that cart. It should have been able to
Right,
scan that cart and see a mismatch. At least warn the customer or say something. Because think about it, then it gets purchased, then it gets to his house, then the person opens it. Now you have an open package. Then they try to use it. Then they call customer
right,
service. I can go through this whole thing and realize you just wasted so much time, money, and the customer's pissed. You're pissed. So to me, it was a technology
right.
website selling technical products, and they know the answers. I wasn't talking about little tiny things. That's what everybody said. Well, we can't do it all. I'm talking about very major, large components that don't work together. It was sort of like putting a 40-inch tire on a car that only took 30 inches. I mean, they can do that on the tire sites,
Yeah.
right? How come you
And
can't
like you
do it
said, it
here?
doesn't even have to
That's
be
why I
like in
was
your
like,
face. It just has to be like, oh, hey, did you know these two parts are probably not
yeah,
compatible?
yeah. Read
Think
here
about
and
how
send
much
them a
that could
link to,
save
reading
if
about
like the
compatibility.
trickle down, like we were talking about, like
Oh,
the return process,
amazing.
and then like how that whole return process costs so much money,
Yeah.
and then maybe not having another returning customer that cost like
It's all preventable. And especially when now you're talking about adding bigger data, being able to analyze these things. Well, what do you do with them? And I have a feeling a lot of companies, maybe even collecting data, but aren't. You got to start figuring out
how
what
you
to
can
do with
apply
this
it
data
to
and
make
how you can help.
realistic changes that benefit you
Right.
and your customer. That's
And your
That's the
customer.
key
And I
because
think
people will
that's
talk
really
about
right.
these
I think
large,
that's it.
lofty goals with automation, with AI, machine learning, but like
Oh yeah,
the whole idea of this
lab.
general
Yeah,
brain that's so smart that can solve all your problems is not going to exist for a while and will not exist right now. So see how you can leverage the
long time.
technology
Yeah,
for realistic applications.
right. There's plenty of things we can do right here and now. Exactly, using just some basic tools and even the limited AI that we have. Like you said, it doesn't even have to be that. I think that that is the next generation, at least for the next few years, is trying to improve some of these things. Um,
Yeah. So I
anyway,
think
that's all I
sort
got.
of to wrap it all up, it's kind of like regardless of which part of the brain you're speaking to or any of that, like it comes down to the customer has a need, and as a store and a company and a brand, you want to deliver them the best, not just the best product that will make them successful, but will also make you successful together, kind of bringing, all parties having success. I think that makes it easier.
Correct. I think we've had some really good points. You need to, if not educate, at
Yeah.
least guide the customer correctly.
Until next time, thank you for hanging out and chatting with us. And we'll be back